Good afternoon and welcome to Lunch and Learn Online. I'm TFL Librarian Sharon and thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to go now to guest presenter Denny for the third installment in our Logic Pro series.
Hello and welcome. This week, I'm going to show you how you can take all of the separate individual tracks that you've recorded in Logic and export them into one audio file so that you can put it on YouTube, put it on Spotify, or share it with your friends. This screen right now is pretty cluttered because this is what it will probably look like once you're done recording all of the tracks that go into your finished piece. You can see here that this piece of music is 46 individual tracks. So getting everything to sound good is going to be a challenge. First thing you're going to want to do is clean up your screen. You might have your inspector open. You might also have your library open. Go ahead and in the top left, close both of those. At this point in your project, you've been playing around with your volume sliders, you've been panning things left and right, and you've probably got a good understanding of how loud each part of your mix should be. Up until now, you've been treating each track as an individual track. All of your equalizers have been set up for that specific track in mind. As you see here, the snare has a different EQ than the hi-hat. But when we export this as one file, it's going to be the sum of all of these tracks. And Logic has this built in. It is not immediately visible, so what you want to do is go to the top of your screen, click on Track, and click on Output Track. Then, in your list of tracks, we'll close the inspector, in your list of tracks, your output will appear at the very bottom, labeled Stereo Out. You can click on this and rename it whatever you want, but I'm going to leave it. Up here in the top left, click on Mixer. Clicking on the mixer opens up your digital mixing board, and on it you can see every single one of your tracks as well as the volume levels. And what you're going to do is pay attention to the stereo out track on the very far right. Then, very simply, you play your track and you listen back to it. Notice how the volume sliders or the volume indicators start moving around as the track is playing back. This is something you're pretty used to seeing by now. But I want to draw your attention to these two numbers, if you see where my mouse is, on top of each track. The number on the right here is your volume. This is how far up or down you've adjusted your volume slider. This number, in this case the negative 3.5, is the peak level. It represents the loudest instance of sound on that track. Notice that we have a negative 1.5 that's in yellow, a negative 3.2 is in green, we have a negative 3.9, a negative 10.9. This is what we're looking for. As this number approaches 0, you're approaching the loudest level that the program can handle. What you want to do is manipulate your volume sliders so that the peak level of sound is never greater than 0. If you go beyond 0, you're at the risk of popping. The sound will become fuzzy, the sound will become poppy, it will not sound the way you want it to. So listen through to your song and make note of how loud each track becomes as it plays back. Any of these that approach, as you see here, 0, become highlighted in yellow. If they go over 0, they'll become red. Your stereo out is what the final song is going to sound like. And you notice here, my peak level is -1.1. As you're listening through to every single track, you see here, this one got a little bit too loud. That's a 2.1. This is a 0.1. As you're listening back, you want to make sure that none of your tracks get too loud. It's okay to have a couple getting a little bit too high here and there, but the real goal is to make sure that your stereo out, your final track that represents all of these individual tracks put together, never gets too loud. Playing with the volume slider on your stereo track, your stereo out, is going to change the volume for everything else. Be really, really careful with this one. If you're noticing that your stereo out sound gets too much, go back using your selector here at the top and play back the song. You can see that the numbers changed, and look for where it spikes. If you can find where it spikes, you can look at the instruments that are playing at that time and see if you can adjust something over here without making a very big change to the entire mix. Next to your stereo out is also your master track. Please notice that the master does not have this peak level. It only has a volume level. You can see that right now it's set to -6.5. I'm going to run you through a little example of how you can manipulate your master track as well. Notice that as I start playing and stop playing by hitting space, this number, this peak level, resets to 0. Pay attention to that. I'm going to take my master slider and I'm going to bring that up to a -4, meaning it's cutting 4 decibels out of the final mix. And look what happens to this -2.8 when I start playing it again. Now we're at 0. A very small change in the master track has brought us right to the very, very, very edge of what's going to sound good. Make very delicate changes to your master track, because this is also a very sensitive slider. So you've got everything where you want it. All of your volume sliders are happy. Your final volume isn't too high. And all of your equalizers, all of your plugins, everything is in place, and you've got it all where you want it. How do you turn this into a finished product? You're going to do something called a bounce. Before you make a bounce, click in this measure bar. You're probably already aware of this yellow slider. This lets you select a region of the song and loop it over and over again. Do yourself a favor and select the beginning and the ending of your song. Then click File, click Bounce, and you're going to click Project or Section. Here you have the choices of different file types. We're going to pick MP3. You can choose your bit rate for it, which is a way of determining the final quality. So why not make it the highest bit rate? You click on OK, and then you choose where it's going to go. Clicking Bounce will send the yellow section of the track as an audio file to the folder that you select. Then you have your song as an audio file. I hope this has been helpful and that the things I've shown you here have given you enough information to start making your own music.